The wind off the Greybridge harbor howled like a wounded animal that night. Snow came down in heavy sheets, swallowing the town's narrow streets and erasing every line between sea and sky. 30 years, the radio said, since the last storm this fierce. But inside the Harbor Light Diner, a single glow remained, a pool of amber warmth against a world gone white. Lena Cruz wiped the counter for the 5th time in an hour, though no one had sat there since dusk. The hum of the old refrigerator and the ticking of the wall clock were the only signs of life. Every few minutes, she'd glance out the fogged-up window, half hoping, half fearing she might see someone still walking in the storm. "Lock up already, mija," said Mr. Alvarez, the retired sailor who came every Thursday for coffee and chess. Tonight, he'd lingered longer than usual, his thick hands cupped around a half-empty mug. "This weather's turning mean. You'll freeze before morning if the power cuts." Lena smiled faintly. "Someone might need a place to wait it out." He shook his head. "You've got too much heart for a world that doesn't deserve it." "I've got a roof," she said softly, "and a working stove. That's enough to matter tonight." She poured him one last refill, steam curling between them like ghostly fingers. Beyond the windows, the harbor lights disappeared one by one. The town seemed to dissolve into the storm, as if Greybridge itself were being rewritten in white. Mr. Alvarez finally stood, his old joints creaking like the docks he once worked. "If someone comes, tell them the coffee's on the house. But don't you play hero, Lena. Heroes end up cold." "I'll keep warm," she promised. When the bell above the door jingled as he left, it sounded heartbreakingly small against the roar of the wind. Minutes stretched into hours. The diner clock hit 10:30, then 11. Still, Lena stayed. She brewed another pot of coffee she didn't need, straightened napkins no one would use. A quiet life, she thought. Predictable, safe. A far cry from the world she once belonged to. Glass towers, boardrooms, headlines. Her reflection shimmered faintly on the stainless steel counter. The same brown eyes, the same steady hands. Only the fire behind them had dimmed. Outside, the storm raged harder, flinging snow against the glass like handfuls of sand. Then, a sudden bang. The door flew open, wind slamming through the diner like a living thing. Lena flinched, shielding her eyes from the icy blast. A figure stumbled in. Small, frail, wrapped in a coat far too thin for this kind of weather. Snow clung to her hair, her face chalk white with cold. "Oh my God!" Lena rushed forward, catching the woman before she collapsed. Sit down, you're freezing." The woman tried to speak but only managed a whisper. I got lost." "Don't talk." Lena guided her to the nearest booth, her voice calm but firm, the kind born of someone who'd learned how to take charge when no one else would. She darted behind the counter, grabbed the emergency blanket from the bottom drawer, and draped it over the woman's shoulders. Then she filled a kettle, lighting the gas stove with practiced ease. Within seconds, the scent of ginger and cinnamon filled the air. When Lena returned, the woman's trembling hands were pressed to the hot mug she offered. "Here," she said softly, "sip slowly." Color began to crawl back into the woman's cheeks. Her eyes, pale blue and startlingly clear, fluttered open. "Thank you, dear. I didn't think I'd make it another block." "You almost didn't," Lena said, smiling faintly. "You're lucky this place never closes. I thought all the shops were dark. I saw your sign glowing through the snow, like a lighthouse." "That's the idea." The woman took another shaky sip. "You're kind. Most people these days would have locked the doors." "Most people don't have Mr. Alvarez yelling at them for being stubborn," Lena teased gently, glancing at the empty seat he'd left behind. The woman smiled, a fragile thing, but real. "My name's Maria," she said after a pause, her voice still rough. "Maria Stone." "Lena Cruz." Maria nodded slowly. "Lena Cruz," she repeated, as if memorizing it. "That's a beautiful name." "Yours too," Lena said. "Now tell me, Maria, where were you trying to go in the middle of a storm like this?" Maria hesitated. Her gaze drifted toward the window, where snow was still piling high against the glass. "I was on my way to see my son. I haven't seen him in 5 years, I think. I thought if I just showed up, maybe—" Her voice faltered, the rest of the sentence dissolving into the sound of the wind. "Maybe he'd remember what family feels like," Lena finished gently. Maria's eyes met hers, surprised, almost relieved that someone understood without asking. "I tried calling," she admitted. "He never answers, always too busy. But birthdays don't wait, do they?" Lena shook her head. "No, they don't. Maria reached into her purse with trembling fingers, pulling out a folded scrap of paper. The ink had bled from melted snow, but one line was still legible. Riverside Tower, Penthouse, 19. Lena's eyebrows rose slightly. That's clear across town. The bridge to that district's probably buried under snow right now. I know, Maria said softly. The taxi driver dropped me off at the wrong side of the river. I told him I'd be fine. Foolish old woman. Just brave, Lena corrected. There's a difference. Maria looked up then, and for a fleeting moment, something fierce glimmered behind the kindness in her eyes. Maybe, or maybe I just didn't want to wait any longer to be forgiven. Lena didn't press. She'd learned that certain silences held more truth than any confession. She stood, ladled soup from a pot she'd been keeping warm on the stove, and set it in front of Maria. Eat, she said simply. You'll think clearer with heat in your body. Maria chuckled weakly. You sound like a doctor. No, Lena said. Just someone who knows what cold can do if you let it in. Outside, the storm howled again, louder, angrier. But inside the diner, the world seemed to shrink into a small circle of warmth. Maria ate slowly, her hands steadying. Between spoonfuls, she studied Lena. The way she moved, precise but unhurried. The way her eyes softened every time she spoke. You run this place alone? Pretty much. The owner's never around. Just me and a few locals who refuse to admit retirement. It's spotless, Maria said, glancing around. I can see pride in every inch of it. It pays the bills, Lena replied with a shrug, and it keeps me from thinking too much. About what? About a different life I once thought I'd have. Maria tilted her head. And what stopped you? Lena's lips curved, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Sometimes life closes doors for you, before you even know you were standing in one. For a moment, only the hum of the stove filled the silence. Then Maria reached across the table, her hand thin and warm over Lena's. Doors can be opened again, dear. You just have to remember where you left the key. Lena swallowed, unsure what to say. The clock ticked toward midnight. The snow outside glittered faintly in the distant streetlights, like shards of broken glass scattered over the world. And somewhere, in that endless white, destiny was already on its way, in the form of a man who hadn't smiled in years. The storm outside deepened into a white abyss. Winds screamed down the narrow streets of Greybridge, rattling windows, burying every trace of the harbor. Inside the Harbor Light Diner, the world had shrunk to a circle of warmth, a stove flame, 2 mugs of tea, and a stranger wrapped in blankets. Maria sat at the counter, still trembling slightly beneath a thick quilt. Steam rose from her cup, fogging her glasses. Her voice was soft but steady again. You should sleep, Lena said, adjusting the heater near her feet. Roads are closed. The city's advising everyone to stay put. Maria shook her head. I can't keep you here all night. You're not keeping me, Lena replied. It's safer if you stay. The storeroom's warm, near the boiler. You'll rest better there. Maria hesitated. You've already done too much. Lena smiled faintly. If it were my mother out there, I'd hope someone would do the same. Maria's eyes softened. So, you understand. Too well, Lena said quietly. She passed a few years ago. It's just me now. Maria reached out, her frail fingers brushing Lena's sleeve. Then maybe, tonight, neither of us is alone. The storeroom was small but cozy, lined with sacks of flour and old shelves of preserves. Lena spread an extra quilt over the narrow couch, smoothing it with the precision of someone who needed everything in order. Maria smiled from the doorway. You've made it look like a guest room. Only difference is I charge in soup instead of rent. That earned a laugh. Small, real. When Maria settled beneath the quilt, she sighed, exhaustion catching up with her. My son would like you, she said suddenly. Lena arched a brow. That depends on the son. Maria's smile faded. He used to be kind. Then his father died and he changed. Lena sat on the edge of a crate listening. Grief did something to him, Maria continued. He built walls, work, money, control. He tells the world he's fine, but he's just frozen. He became excellent at business and terrible at being human. Lena's expression shifted. Sympathy, recognition. I've met people like that. Sometimes they forget that control doesn't mean peace. Maria looked at her curiously. You sound like you know. Let's just say I've seen what happens when ambition swallows everything else. The words hung between them. Neither pushed for more. The kettle hissed softly on the stove. Lena poured another mug of tea and handed it over. The small act filled the silence better than any comfort could. "Do you have children?" Maria asked after a moment. Lena shook her head. "No, I guess I spent too long building a life that didn't last." Maria smiled sadly. "We all build something that falls eventually. The trick is remembering we can build again." Lena looked up at her, surprised by the wisdom behind the gentle tone. "You don't sound like someone who gives up easily." "I don't," Maria said. "That's why I came here. My son stopped visiting, stopped calling. But birthdays are stubborn things. They remind you who you miss. Where does he live?" Maria pulled a damp slip of paper from her coat pocket. The ink had smudged, but one line remained clear. "Riverside Tower, Penthouse 19. Lena frowned. "That's on the north side, across the bridge. No one's driving there tonight." "The driver dropped me near the river," Maria admitted. "He said he couldn't risk the bridge. I thought I could walk the rest." "Foolish idea. Lucky mistake," Lena said gently. "The harbor would have swallowed you whole," Maria chuckled weakly. "Would have made quite a headline." "Let's not test it." Lena checked her phone. No signal. The storm had eaten every tower. No taxis, no buses, no miracle. Maria's face softened into resignation. "Then it seems I'm your problem till morning." "Problem?" Lena grinned. "I'd call it company." Later, as Maria drifted towards sleep, Lena returned to the counter. The diner was still, the world outside a blur of white. She cleaned out of habit, not need, wiping, stacking, listening to the heater hum like a tired heart. When she glanced at the counter, she noticed the paper Maria had left behind. The name beneath the address caught her eye. Gabriel Stone. The words jolted her. She'd seen that name before. In trade journals, business reports, corporate lawsuits. The man behind Kestrel Dynamics, the empire that ran on precision and profit. Ruthless, brilliant, untouchable. Her eyes flicked toward the sleeping figure in the storeroom. Maria Stone, his mother. Lena exhaled slowly, feeling a strange pull. Not fear, not awe, just the faint ache of recognition. She knew that world once. She'd spent years navigating people like him, men who measured compassion in profit margins. And now fate had delivered his mother to her diner in the middle of a blizzard. The irony wasn't lost on her. Around midnight, she reached for the diner's old landline. The receiver was cool in her hand, the cord coiled like a tired snake. Maria stirred at the sound. "What are you doing?" "Calling your son," Lena said simply. "Just to let him know you're safe." Maria hesitated. "He won't answer. He screens everything." "Then he'll hear my message." She dialed the number written under emergency contact, Kestrel Tower. The line rang twice before a clipped, automated voice answered. "You've reached the office of Gabriel Stone, Chief Executive Officer of Kestrel Dynamics. Please leave your message after the tone." The title rolled out like marble, cold and perfect. Lena took a breath. "Mr. Stone, this is Lena Cruz. Your mother, Maria, is safe. She was caught in the storm, but found shelter at Harbor Light Diner near the waterfront. She's resting now. The roads are closed, but she's warm and cared for." A pause, then softer. "That's all." She hung up, the click echoing louder than expected. Maria's voice came from behind her. "You didn't have to do that." Lena turned, smiling gently. "It's not kindness if you expect something back." Maria's eyes glimmered. "You remind me of someone my son used to be." "Maybe he'll remember then," Lena said. Outside, the storm howled on. Relentless, powerful, alive. But inside the diner, time seemed to still. Two women, strangers just hours ago, now shared the kind of quiet that only exists when the world outside has lost its voice. And across town, in a glass tower buried under snow, a single phone light blinked in the dark, unheard, but not unnoticed. Outside, the storm had become a beast. Snow lashed the harbor road, swallowing the town in white silence. Then, through the chaos, a pair of headlights cut through like a blade. A black SUV crawled up the street, tires crunching ice. It stopped hard in front of the Harbor Light Diner. The engine stayed running, a low growl under the storm. Inside, Lena glanced up from wiping the counter. The lights cast long shadows across the empty booths. She thought maybe it was rescue patrol, but when the door burst open, it wasn't rescue. A gust of wind roared in, carrying a man with it, tall, sharp-shouldered, wrapped in a dark coat powdered with snow. His eyes were blue-gray, cold and exacting, his jaw clenched against the storm. For a moment, the world seemed to tilt. The warmth of the diner and the freezing night collided around him. Lena steadied her breath. "We're closed," the man's voice cut through the wind. "I received an alert. My mother triggered her emergency beacon at this address. Where is she?" Lena blinked. So, this was him. "She's safe," she said. "Sleeping in the back. Nearly froze before she found this place." He stepped closer. "Take me to her." "You'll wake her," Lena warned. "She needs rest." "I came through a blizzard to find her," he said. "I'm not leaving without seeing she's alive." "Then look," Lena said evenly, but quietly. The command in his tone met the steadiness in hers, two forces colliding, neither flinching. She led him down the short hallway. The storeroom lamp glowed soft amber over the sleeping figure on the couch. Maria Stone breathed steadily under a quilt, her face peaceful. Gabriel Stone froze in the doorway. His whole posture changed, the businessman's armor cracking for a heartbeat. He exhaled, slow and shallow, as if seeing something he'd almost lost. "She tried to surprise you," Lena whispered. "Didn't quite go as planned." He didn't answer, just nodded once, then quietly, "Thank you." Lena said nothing. Gratitude didn't suit him yet. It sounded foreign, like a language he'd forgotten. Back in the diner, she poured him coffee. "Sit," she said simply. He hesitated, then obeyed. She set the mug down, steam curling between them. "You could have called before driving into a storm," she said. "I didn't get the message until half an hour ago," he replied. "My assistant forwarded it." "Your assistant," Lena repeated, unimpressed. "So, your mother almost froze because she wasn't on your priority list." Gabriel looked up, startled. "Excuse me? You heard me." He stared at her, not in anger, but in shock. No one spoke to him like this, not in years. Lena sipped her coffee calmly. "Don't worry, she's tougher than she looks." He studied her, brow furrowed. "You talk to everyone like that?" "Only the ones who think money makes them bulletproof." Gabriel almost smiled, though he caught it before it showed. "And you, Miss Cruz, Lena Cruz, you run this place? I keep it alive." Her tone made it sound like the diner was more than work, like it was survival. The wind slammed against the windows again, making the walls tremble. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out. "Perfect," Lena muttered, reaching under the counter. "Do you need help?" he asked, already shrugging off his coat. She gave him a look. "You fix power outages, Mr. CEO?" "I built server rooms before I built companies," he said dryly. "Then start with candles," she replied, tossing him a lighter. Minutes later, the diner was bathed in gold. Candlelight shimmered off chrome, throwing moving shadows across the room. Outside, the storm howled, but inside, a fragile peace took shape. Gabriel glanced around, oddly struck by the warmth. He wasn't used to quiet places that didn't feel empty. "You've done this before," he said quietly. "Stayed open in bad weather?" Lena smiled faintly. "Always. Someone's got to be the light when everything else shuts down." He watched her move, calm, efficient, unafraid. "You don't belong here," he said without thinking. Lena froze mid-step. "Meaning, your posture, your tone. You sound like someone who used to command rooms, not serve them." She met his gaze. "And you sound like someone who mistakes observation for truth." For a second, neither looked away. The air thickened between them, charged but wordless. Gabriel broke first. "You know who I am, don't you?" Lena shrugged. "The name on your mother's note made it obvious." "And that doesn't bother you?" "Should it?" "Most people react differently when I walk into a room." "Then maybe you've been walking into the wrong rooms," she said. His eyes flickered. Irritation or amusement, she couldn't tell. "You don't fear me," he said finally. "Why would I?" "Because everyone does." "That's their problem." Something like laughter, quiet, disbelieving, slipped past his control. For the first time, he looked less like a headline and more like a man. "You're wasting your night talking to me," he said after a pause. "You could have locked the door and gone home. I don't like the idea of someone freezing on my doorstep." "You could have called emergency services?" "I did," Lena said. "They told me to wait for morning, so I did what they couldn't." Gabriel looked at her again, studying the steady flame reflected in her eyes. "That's rare." Doing what's right shouldn't be, she said. He leaned back. You speak like someone who's seen too much wrong. Maybe, she said. Or maybe I just stopped pretending not to notice. Outside, the wind began to ease, turning from a scream to a whisper. In the flickering light, their shadows stretched across the diner floor, two strangers drawn together by accident and weather. Gabriel stood, glancing toward the back room. I'll stay until the storm clears. I don't want her alone if the power cuts again. Suit yourself, Lena said, but no corporate takeovers while I'm on shift. He smirked, surprised at his own reaction. Duly noted. As he walked to the booth by the window, Lena watched him, a man built on discipline and distance, now stranded in a diner that didn't care about either. For the first time in years, someone had looked Gabriel Stone straight in the eye and not flinched. And that, more than the storm, was what unsettled him. The lights died without warning, a sharp crack outside, followed by silence. Then darkness swallowed the harbor. One by one, the windows of Graybridge flickered out, until only the Harbor Light Diner stood faintly visible under the storm. Lena froze for a beat, then exhaled. There goes the grid! From the booth, Gabriel looked up, his face lit only by the storm's pale reflection. Backup generator? This is a diner, not a data center, Lena said, already moving behind the counter. But we've got fire and coffee. That's more than most tonight. She struck a match. The hiss and flare filled the room with sudden gold. One by one, she lit oil lamps she kept for emergencies, placing them around the diner until the space glowed like a pocket of warmth inside the white void. Outside, the wind howled, pushing snow against the glass like hands trying to get in. Inside, it was strangely peaceful. Gabriel slipped off his gloves, watching her work. You're unusually calm. Lena adjusted the wick of a lamp. It's not my first blackout. You handle chaos well. She smiled faintly. You'd be surprised how much order comes from repetition. The world ends, I make tea. Keeps things simple. Gabriel almost smiled, but stopped himself. You really don't mind being trapped here? I'm not trapped. I'm home. That answer caught him off guard. For a man who built his life controlling outcomes, the idea of someone content with stillness was foreign. He rubbed his temples, tension finally catching up to him. I planned to get her, drive back, handle a morning meeting. Now the storm doesn't care about your plans, Lena said gently. Maybe that's a lesson in disguise. He raised an eyebrow. You think storms have moral purpose? I think life does, she replied. Storms just make us pay attention. She poured coffee into 2 chipped mugs and slid one across the counter. Drink. It's not imported, but it's real. Gabriel accepted, the warmth biting pleasantly at his palms. For a moment, they drank in silence. 2 strangers linked by circumstance and caffeine. Then he spoke, studying her over the rim of his cup. You run this place alone? Mostly. You sound like someone who shouldn't have to. Lena arched a brow. What's that supposed to mean? You speak well. You think before you answer. You're deliberate. That's not common in... He stopped. In diners? She finished, half amused. He cleared his throat. I didn't mean it that way. I know what you meant, she said softly. You spend long enough at the top, and everything below starts looking like background noise. He frowned. You assume a lot about me. I don't have to assume, she said. It's in your eyes, the way you scan a room, the way you stand even when you sit. You've built a world where you control everything, until you don't. He met her gaze, a flicker of irritation sparking. And you talk like someone who studied people for a living. Lena shrugged. Observation's free. Maybe I just learned to listen. Or maybe, Gabriel said, leaning forward, you've lived close enough to power to recognize it. Her hand stilled around her mug. Maybe, she said after a pause, but power isn't the same as worth. The wind rattled the window again, punctuating her words. Gabriel watched her carefully, the precision in her voice, the restraint. She wasn't intimidated, but she wasn't reckless either. Who were you before this? He asked. Does it matter? It does if I'm trying to understand you. Why? She countered. You trying to analyze me like one of your spreadsheets? A faint smirk crossed his face. It's a habit. Then break it, Lena said, her tone soft but unyielding. Not everything valuable can be measured. He tilted his head. You really don't like people like me. I don't know you, she said, but I know the type. Men who think power protects them from consequence. I used to work for a few. Gabriel's expression sharpened. You did? She hesitated. not ready to open that door. A lifetime ago. Finance, he guessed. Her silence confirmed it. He sat back, intrigued. You said used to. What changed? The cost, she said simply. Turns out the paycheck wasn't worth what it took from me. The lamps flickered, as if agreeing. He studied her. The calmness, the quiet confidence that came from surviving something no one else had seen. You're not what I expected, he admitted. Neither are you, she said. How so? I thought you'd be louder. He laughed, surprised. The sound startled both of them, the first warmth outside of candlelight. I'm not used to people telling me what they think, he said. Then you've been surrounding yourself with the wrong people, Lena replied. That hit deeper than she intended. He looked down at his cup, fingers tightening around it. Outside, the snow began to slow, flakes drifting softer now, like ash after fire. A long silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, but charged. You know, Gabriel said quietly, you could have locked the door and pretended not to see her. Most would have. Lena's gaze stayed on the flickering flame. Someone taught me once that compassion isn't currency. You give it or you lose it. He nodded slowly. My mother always believed that too. So, what happened? He hesitated. I built something big enough to drown her voice. Then maybe this storm was her way of being heard again. That drew a real smile from him. Tired, genuine. Maybe, he said. Maybe it was. The kettle whistled softly, the sound small but grounding. Lena refilled their cups, her sleeve brushing his hand for just a moment. A spark, fleeting but undeniable. They both looked up, startled, then away again. For the first time, Gabriel saw her not as a woman behind a counter, but as someone carrying the same kind of silence he did. The silence of people who had once lost everything that defined them. He wanted to ask her more, to know what had broken her and why she'd chosen to stay hidden here. But something about her composure told him not to, so he said only, You make good coffee, and you make good storms, she replied. He chuckled softly. Truce then? For tonight, she said. Outside, the snow thickened once more, hiding the harbor completely. Inside, the diner stood like an island, a flicker of light in a world gone cold. Two people, once strangers, now sat across from each other, trapped not by the storm, but by the truth slowly thawing between them. The storm had softened by midnight. Snow no longer screamed against the glass. It whispered. The diner was quiet except for the faint hiss of the gas flame and the rhythm of someone breathing in the storeroom. Maria Stone stirred awake, blinking at the dim glow of the oil lamp beside her. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then she saw him, her son. Gabriel sat on a folding chair next to the couch, still in his shirt and dark slacks, his coat draped over the backrest. His head had tilted forward, chin resting against his chest, the faintest shadow of exhaustion softening his features. He looked nothing like the man the world called ruthless. In that moment, he was just a boy who'd fallen asleep guarding what he couldn't admit he feared losing. Maria's eyes warmed. A mother's understanding rarely sleeps. She noticed the way his hand still gripped the edge of her blanket, keeping it from sliding off. Even unconscious, he was holding on. She whispered, You never did learn how to rest, did you? Lena appeared quietly in the doorway, a cup of tea cradled in both hands. The faint lamplight gilded her face in gold. She's awake, she whispered. Maria smiled, beckoning her closer. Come in, dear. He won't bite. At least not while he's asleep. Lena stepped forward, her eyes softening as they fell on Gabriel. The sight surprised her. His features, usually so controlled, were unguarded now, the hard lines eased, the frown erased. He looks different like this, she murmured. Maria's tone carried a hint of mischief. My son likes to act like the world rests on his shoulders. He forgets that once he couldn't even hold his father's compass without dropping it. Lena glanced at her. Compass? Maria chuckled quietly. When he was 8, his father gave him a brass compass to always find his way home. One summer day, he dropped it off the pier, spent hours crying, thinking he'd lost his way forever. We bought him another, but it wasn't the same. Gabriel stirred at the mention, eyelids flickering open. His mother's voice pulled him from sleep like a distant echo. Mom? Maria smiled. Still guarding me, I see. He straightened, rubbing his temples. You shouldn't be up. I could say the same, she teased. He frowned, realizing both women were watching him with faint amusement. You two already ganged up on me? Lena tried not to laugh. Only a little, Gabriel sighed, leaning back in the chair. I suppose I should be grateful the diner isn't running a loyalty program for insults. You'd earn a free pie by now, Lena said. Maria laughed softly, a sound so rare that Gabriel's shoulders eased without realizing. Lena set the tea down beside Maria. Drink this. It'll help you sleep again. Thank you, sweetheart, Maria said. Then, with a mischievous glance toward her son, she added, You know, it's nice seeing him, cared for by someone who isn't paid to pretend. Gabriel groaned. Mom. Oh, don't roll your eyes, Maria said. I've seen your interviews. The famous Gabriel Stone, decisive, efficient, emotionally unavailable. Lena's lips curved. She's not wrong. He looked from one to the other, half in disbelief. Do all women conspire to humiliate me, or is this a family talent? Maria winked. You make it easy, darling. Lena hid her smile behind her cup. The air between them had changed. Lighter, warmer, edged with something human. When Maria finally drifted back to sleep, the room fell quiet again. Lena moved to adjust the lamp, her hands steady, though her breath came out in small clouds. You don't have to stay, Gabriel said, his voice low now. You've done enough. I'm not leaving her alone while the temperature's dropping, she replied. She's fine. You say that like you're trying to convince yourself. He looked at her then, really looked. The lamplight caught in her eyes, and for a moment, the sharp businessman faded. You're observant. I notice what people try to hide. What do you think I'm hiding? Lena met his gaze. You act like being in control is strength, but sometimes it's just fear wearing a better suit. He blinked, taken aback. You sound like my mother. That's a compliment, she said. Not to me, Lena smiled faintly. Maybe it should be. For a long time, they stood in the soft light, neither looking away. Lena reached for the teapot, pouring him a cup without asking. You're not going to sleep either, are you? I don't sleep much. Guilt or habit? Responsibility, he said automatically. That's what people say when they mean guilt. He stared at her, not angry, just silent. She had a way of cutting straight through words. He took the cup from her hand, their fingers brushing for the briefest second. Neither pulled away. The touch was accidental, but it lingered in the air, a spark, quiet and immediate. Lena looked down, pretending to adjust the lamp. You're freezing. So are you, he said softly. You just hide it better. Her breath hitched, but she didn't answer. For a moment, the world seemed to narrow to the faint circle of light between them, the sleeping mother, the scent of tea, the hum of the storm beyond the walls. Lena saw the truth then. His coldness wasn't cruelty, it was armor, built over years of loss, pressure, and expectation. The media had painted him as heartless. In reality, he was terrified of breaking open again. And Gabriel, watching her, saw something too. That this woman in a worn sweater and tired eyes carried her own kind of armor. He wanted to ask what she'd lost, what she'd left behind to end up here, but her expression, calm and steady, warned him not to pry. Instead, he said quietly, You ever think storms choose where they stop? Lena tilted her head. What do you mean? He looked toward his mother. Out of everywhere she could have ended up, she walked into your light. Lena's voice softened. Maybe some people need to lose their compass before they can find what matters. Gabriel smiled faintly, that old word resurfacing. Compass, he repeated. She told you about that? She did. He chuckled under his breath. I cried for days. Dad told me it was the sea's way of keeping a part of me. And did you believe him? I did. For a while, she nodded. Maybe it's still true. They both turned to the window. The snow was still falling, gentler now, the flakes catching the lamplight like tiny stars. Lena leaned against the counter, arms folded. You'll make it through the night, she said softly. He looked at her again, something shifting behind his eyes. I already am. Neither moved. Neither needed to. In the quiet, a fragile understanding took shape. Not romance, not yet, but recognition. Two people seeing each other, without masks, without titles, without the noise of the world. And for Gabriel Stone, a man who had spent years hidden behind glass towers and perfect numbers, that moment felt like the first real breath in years. The wind howled again, louder than before. It was past 1 in the morning, the storm's fury fading into a restless rhythm, until the diner door slammed open for the 3rd time that night. Lena looked up from the counter, startled. Snow burst inside like smoke. A tall man stepped through, brushing white flakes from the shoulders of an expensive navy coat. The cut of it alone screamed money. Beneath the charm in his expression was something colder, calculation dressed as confidence. "Evening," he said smoothly, his voice rich and controlled, or what's left of it. Gabriel turned, instantly on alert. "Victor?" Victor Hale smiled, all easy composure. "I figured you'd be here. The system pinged your security beacon, and when I couldn't reach you, I followed the signal. Didn't expect to find civilization still open." Lena froze. That voice, smooth, precise, unmistakable. Her heart stuttered before logic caught up. She hadn't heard it in years, but she'd never forgotten. The man who had smiled while ruining her life. "Graybridge," Victor said, scanning the space. "A charming little relic, though I must admit, I didn't picture you, Gabriel Stone, hiding out in a diner." "It's a long story," Gabriel replied, "and an unnecessary trip. You shouldn't be out in this weather." Victor removed his gloves, his smile never faltering. "You know me. Never could resist a crisis. Besides, someone has to keep your empire from freezing over." His eyes flicked past Gabriel, to Lena. The shift in his posture was instant. A fraction of a second, tension, disbelief, then that perfect corporate grin snapped back into place. "Well," he said softly, "Graybridge just got smaller." Lena stood motionless behind the counter, every nerve screaming, "Don't react." Victor took a slow step closer, snow melting from his hair. "Lena Cruz, I'll be damned." He gave a short, incredulous laugh. "You're the last person I expected to see north of Manhattan." Lena's tone was calm, almost too calm. "People end up in strange places when they stop caring about appearances," Victor chuckled. Still sharp as ever, he extended a gloved hand. "It's been, what, 4 years?" Lena didn't move. The silence between them stretched, heavy, electric. Gabriel glanced between them, his instincts sharpening. The way Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes, the way Lena's hands rested steady on the counter, but her knuckles had gone white. "You two know each other?" Gabriel asked, his voice low. Victor's smile widened. "We used to work together, back when Lena here was one of the brightest analysts on the East Coast. She had an eye for numbers, and a temper for ethics." Lena's eyes flicked up, meeting his without fear. "And you had a talent for turning other people's ethics into liabilities." The air snapped. Gabriel stood between them now, his presence grounding the tension. "I'm assuming this reunion isn't coincidence," he said evenly. "Coincidence?" Victor echoed, feigning innocence. "Not exactly. When I saw the weather alerts and realized you had left the city, I thought you might need backup." "I don't," Gabriel said flatly. Victor smiled again, but something metallic gleamed behind the charm. "Be reasonable. The Kestrel Nortec acquisition closes in 48 hours. Investors are already nervous. They'll panic if they think the CEO vanished in a snowstorm." "Let them panic," Gabriel said. "It'll remind them the company isn't immortal." Victor laughed lightly. "Spoken like a man who hasn't checked the markets this week." Gabriel's jaw tightened. "This isn't the time." "Oh, I disagree," Victor said, stepping past him toward the counter. "Time is exactly what we're running out of." Lena's voice broke the quiet. "Maybe take your boardroom somewhere else." Victor turned, studying her again. The steady tone, the unwavering eyes. "Still don't like being dismissed, I see. Still don't like being told the truth, I see," she replied. Gabriel's head snapped toward her, confusion flickering. The truth? He looked at Victor again, saw, for the first time, a flicker of unease in the man's perfect mask. "Care to explain?" he asked. Victor waved a hand. "Ancient history, office politics. We had a difference of philosophy." Lena gave a dry laugh. "Is that what you're calling it now?" "Let's not rewrite the past, Lena," Victor said smoothly. "You made accusations you couldn't prove. People got hurt. It's unfortunate, but you destroyed my reputation because I refused to alter data," she cut in, voice low but steady. The words hit like a fault line cracking open. Gabriel went still. For a moment, only the storm outside dared to move. Then Gabriel's voice, calm but edged. "Alter data?" Victor turned toward him, mask cracking slightly. "Let's not do this here." Lena crossed her arms. "Why not? You've always preferred private conversations." Less record of the lies that way. Enough, Victor snapped, just a flicker of temper, quickly buried. He adjusted his cufflinks, regaining composure. Gabriel, she's twisting. But Gabriel's eyes were on Lena now, and something in her face told him this wasn't a story. It was history. You worked for him? He asked quietly. Lena nodded once. Until the day I stopped letting him decide what was true. The silence after that was heavier than any blizzard. Victor smiled again, but his voice had turned brittle. Well, this is awkward. I walk in expecting a CEO and a rescue mission. Instead, I find my old employee playing savior to his mother. What are the odds? Smaller than your chances of leaving here with that arrogance intact, Lena said. Gabriel's hand tightened around his coffee mug. The controlled man was still there, but beneath it something new. Anger, not for himself, for her. Victor's gaze flicked between them and settled on the faint closeness in their posture. The warmth, the shared trust. Interesting, he smirked. I see. So, that's how it is? Don't, Gabriel warned, voice like gravel. Victor's eyes gleamed. Relax, old friend. I'm just saying, it's amazing who fate puts in our path, especially the ones with unfinished stories. Lena stepped out from behind the counter, standing between both men. Her voice cut clean through the tension. You should leave, Mr. Hale. The storm hasn't cleared, he said, then find another shelter. Gabriel rose from his seat, matching her stance. You heard her. Victor studied them, the CEO and the diner manager, standing side by side under flickering lamplight, and smiled that thin, calculated smile of a man already planning his next move. Careful, Gabriel, he said. Sometimes the people who save us come with their own disasters attached. Gabriel's expression didn't change, but his words landed cold. Then I guess I'll handle both. Victor's gaze lingered one beat too long on Lena. Then he nodded, slipping his gloves back on. Until next time. The bell over the door jingled softly as he stepped out into the storm. For a long while, neither spoke. Only the wind outside filled the space between them. Lena finally exhaled. He shouldn't have come. Gabriel's eyes were still fixed on the door. He shouldn't have known where I was. When he turned back to her, the weight in his expression was no longer curiosity. It was realization. Whatever had just entered their lives wasn't over. It had only begun. The storm had quieted, but the diner felt colder than before. The lamps still flickered softly, throwing uneven light across the counter. Gabriel sat at the booth nearest the window, coat half unbuttoned, jaw tight. Lena stood by the counter, motionless, her hand wrapped around a chipped mug as though it anchored her to the room. Victor leaned back in his chair with practiced ease, his tone smooth, his smile patient, the kind of calm that only power can buy. Let's not dramatize this, he began, voice perfectly measured. Lena and I have history, yes, but it's hardly the scandal it sounds like. He turned slightly toward Gabriel, lowering his voice just enough to make it sound intimate, a conversation between men who understood how the world really worked. She was one of ours, risk analysis division, Manhattan headquarters, brilliant in her way, idealistic. He said the word like it was a flaw, but too idealistic for the realities of corporate finance. Lena said nothing. Her eyes remained fixed on the cup in her hands. Victor continued, almost kindly. She wanted transparency, thought every deal should be pure, every merger spotless. You know how that sounds to investors? Naive. Gabriel's fingers drummed once on the table. Go on. She started questioning everything, Victor said. Every acquisition, every report, accused colleagues of manipulation, without proof. At first we thought it was stress. Everyone cracks under pressure eventually. But then her behavior became erratic. She sent emails to compliance, even to the SEC, claiming fraud in deals she didn't understand. His tone stayed even, almost sympathetic. I tried to protect her, God knows I did, but she wouldn't listen. And when someone becomes unpredictable in a field that demands precision, you have to make hard choices. He looked straight at Gabriel, voice dropping to a near whisper. I signed the termination myself, a necessary act, for the company's safety. And hers. Silence. Outside, the storm breathed against the glass. Gabriel's gaze had grown distant, expression unreadable. You're saying she was unstable. Victor spread his hands, as if reluctant. I'm saying she was brilliant, but brittle. the kind of person who breaks when the world refuses to bend. I respected her once, still do in a way, but she's not someone you can build trust around, not with investor money on the line. Lena's grip tightened around the cup, her knuckles blanched. Maria, from the corner booth, folded a scarf in slow, deliberate movements. She didn't speak, but her eyes, sharp and knowing, tracked every word that came from Victor's mouth and every flicker that passed over her son's face. Gabriel's shoulders stiffened. And the accusations? Baseless, Victor replied easily. Internal review cleared us of everything. But by then, the damage was done. The press whispered. Clients hesitated. We had to make an example. It wasn't personal. He paused, letting the words sink in, then added softly, I thought she'd move on. Maybe find peace somewhere quiet. I'm genuinely glad she did. Lena finally looked up. Peace? Her voice was steady, too steady. You call erasing someone's life peace? Victor turned toward her, expression composed. Lena, no one erased you. You chose to leave. You made it impossible to stay. He tilted his head. You always saw the world in absolutes, villains and victims. But business isn't morality, it's momentum. You either move with it or get crushed under it. Her lips pressed into a line. You always did love the sound of your own justifications. Gabriel cut in quietly. Enough. Both turned toward him. His eyes stayed on Victor. Why bring this up now? Victor's smile returned, faint and knowing. Because you deserve the truth, the full picture. You're building an empire, Gabriel. You can't afford to let sentiment cloud judgment, especially when it comes wrapped in a pretty face and a tragic backstory. Lena flinched, but didn't speak. Maria's hands stilled over her scarf. Gabriel rose slowly from his seat. You think I'm sentimental. I think, Victor said carefully, you're human, and I think that's dangerous in our line of work. He leaned forward, lowering his tone again, intimate, persuasive. You've known me 10 years. I've never lied to you. I've saved deals you thought were impossible, cleaned messes before they hit headlines. And I'm telling you now, if she's in your orbit, it's not coincidence. It's leverage waiting to be used. Gabriel's jaw flexed. He said nothing. Lena watched him, eyes searching for something. Disbelief, defense, anything. But Gabriel's face had gone still, his silence unreadable. Victor leaned back, sensing the shift. You're a smart man. You know the cost of trusting the wrong people. And you also know I'm rarely wrong about character. He smiled faintly. We all play our parts. Mine is protecting what we've built. Yours is deciding whether that protection still matters. The lamps flickered again. Maria cleared her throat softly. The sound small, but cutting through the tension like a bell. Funny, she said, folding her scarf into her lap. For someone so devoted to truth, you use a lot of pretty words to avoid it. Victor turned, surprised. Mrs. Stone, she raised a hand. Oh, don't Mrs. Stone me. I've been listening for 10 minutes and haven't heard a single honest sentence. My husband used to teach high school chemistry, knew how to tell when a student was lying. The trick, he said, was in the eyes. Yours move too much. Victor's smile wavered. I'm not sure what you think. I think, Maria said calmly, that anyone who has to talk this much to sound trustworthy probably isn't. Lena almost smiled, just barely. Gabriel's expression softened, conflicted. Mother, she turned to him, voice low but firm. You listen to numbers for a living, son. But not everything true fits on a spreadsheet. Sometimes you have to feel the temperature in a room. And right now, it just dropped 20 degrees. He hesitated, caught between the man he was trained to be and the son who still trusted his mother's instincts. Victor rose smoothly, straightening his coat. I understand the sentimentality here, he said evenly, but this isn't about feelings. It's about protecting Kestrel from bad optics. If that means reminding you who Lena Cruz really is, then so be it. Maria's voice hardened. You've said enough. Victor's gaze flicked to her, then back to Gabriel. I'll let you think it over, but take advice from someone who's been through more storms than this one. Trust is a luxury, and luxuries cost money. He gave a polite nod and turned toward the door, his shadow long in the dim light. When the door shut behind him, the diner seemed to exhale. Gabriel stood still, his reflection ghosted in the dark window. The quiet stretched. Lena finally spoke, her voice quiet. You believe him. Gabriel didn't turn. I don't know what to believe. That's not an answer. He faced her then, eyes shadowed. It's the only honest one I have. The words landed harder than he intended. Lena's face didn't change, but something in her gaze dimmed. The familiar pain of a wound reopened. Maria watched silently, the scarf now perfectly folded in her lap, her eyes unreadable. The storm outside had weakened, but inside the diner, a colder one had just begun. The storm had quieted into a steady whisper, soft, relentless, like the echo of something unresolved. Victor's taillights were long gone, swallowed by white, leaving behind only silence and a thin tension that seemed to hum through the diner walls. Maria sat in the corner booth, her scarf neatly folded beside a half-empty cup of tea. Gabriel stood near the counter, still staring at the door, as if trying to read something in the air Victor had left behind. Lena moved wordlessly behind the counter, refilling the coffee pot, though no one had asked. The only sound was the steady hiss of the gas flame and the faint click of china against metal. Maria finally broke the silence. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp. "Gabriel, tell me something," she said. "Did that sound like a man protecting a company to you, or like a lawyer trying to rewrite history?" He turned slowly, his posture still composed but his tone clipped. "Mother, you're reading into things." "I'm listening to things," she corrected. "And what I heard wasn't truth. It was strategy." Gabriel rubbed his temple, exhaling through his nose. Victor's always been like that. Precise, controlled. He doesn't mean harm. It's just his way. "His way," Maria echoed. "And what exactly is that, son? Protecting the company?" "He's done it before," Gabriel said. "He saved us in 3 mergers. He pulled Kestrel out of litigation when everyone thought we'd collapse. He kept you afraid to breathe without him," Maria finished softly. He froze. Her tone wasn't angry. It was heartbreakingly gentle. "I watched you become the kind of man who measures every decision by liability. Do you even remember when you stopped asking if something was right and started asking if it was safe?" He didn't answer. Maria's hand moved across the table, brushing a napkin into place. "That man tonight wasn't loyal, Gabriel. He was nervous, and a nervous liar is the most dangerous kind." Lena said nothing. She stood near the coffee pot, head slightly bowed, pretending to focus on the steam. But every word landed like a small tremor through her chest. She didn't want to look up, didn't want to see whether Gabriel was defending Victor out of loyalty or fear. Still, she spoke, quietly, ominously, silently, almost to herself. "Sometimes people build their walls so high they can't tell who's outside trying to hurt them and who's inside trying to help." Gabriel turned toward her. "And which are you?" Lena met his gaze. "That's for you to decide." The room went still again. Maria looked between them. The sun caught between worlds, the woman holding a truth too heavy to share. Her fingers toyed with her teacup as if weighing something invisible. Then she stood. "I'm going to check the back windows," she said. "The wind's shifting. You two should talk." Her tone was casual, but her eyes, when they passed over Gabriel, were not. They said, "Don't waste this chance." Lena poured another cup of coffee, sliding it toward him without meeting his eyes. "Here." He didn't touch it. "You don't have to act like everything's fine." "I'm not," she said softly. "I'm acting like it's manageable." Gabriel exhaled, the weight in his shoulders heavier now. "Lena, I need to understand. He said things tonight, things that don't line up. You didn't deny them, but you didn't confirm them either. So, tell me, who are you really?" Her hand froze mid-motion. When she finally looked at him, her expression wasn't angry. It was tired. "Would it matter?" "It would," he said. "Because right now, every instinct I've ever trusted is fighting itself. I need something true to hold on to." She studied him for a long moment. The man standing in front of her, eyes shadowed, voice low, but no longer sharp or commanding. This wasn't the CEO she'd seen on magazine covers. This was the boy who still believed the world could be fixed if he just worked hard enough to control it. Lena's voice softened. "You think truth will fix this?" "I think it's all that can," he replied. She almost smiled. "You sound like me before everything went wrong." "Then help me understand what went wrong." "Why?" she asked. "So you can decide if I'm worth trusting?" He didn't answer immediately. The firelight painted his face in flickers of gold and shadow. "No," he said at last. "So I can stop doubting everything else." Something in his tone broke her guard. Not because of what he said, but how he said it. It wasn't an interrogation. It was a plea. Lena took a step closer. The soft hiss of the flame filled the silence between them. "You want to know who I am?" she asked quietly. "Fine. I used to believe numbers couldn't lie, that if you measured things carefully enough, risk, value, trust, you could predict anything. Then I learned that people can twist numbers just as easily as they twist words." Gabriel listened, unmoving. "I worked under Victor once," she continued, "and I found patterns in our merger data that didn't make sense. Whole sections rewritten, projections inflated. When I asked why, I was told to stop asking." She looked down at her cup, watching the steam curl. "So I didn't stop. And that was my mistake." Gabriel's throat tightened. "What did they do?" "They rewrote me instead," she said. "Turned me into a cautionary tale. The unstable analyst who cracked under pressure. They erased the evidence and left me with the blame." He closed his eyes for a moment, as though something inside him hurt. "Why didn't you go public?" "I tried, but by the time I reached the SEC, the documents had been altered. My name was all over the falsified versions. My own colleagues stopped taking my calls. You can't fight a storm when the wind's coming from above you." Gabriel's voice was low. "And now you're here." "Now I'm here," she said simply, "serving coffee in a town where no one asks what you used to be." He stepped closer, not too close, but enough for her to see that his anger had melted into something else. Guilt, maybe, or recognition. He reached for the cup she had poured him earlier, taking a slow sip as if grounding himself in the heat. Then, quietly, "You could have left her out there, my mother." "I wouldn't do that." "I know," he said. "That's the part that scares me." Lena frowned. "Why would it scare you?" "Because it means I might have just believed the wrong man for too long." They stood in silence, the storm's wind pressing softly against the windows. From across the room, Maria watched them, unseen but not unnoticed. Her eyes glimmered with a quiet understanding, like someone who'd just moved a vital piece across an invisible chessboard. She whispered to herself, "Finally." At the counter, Gabriel looked at Lena, really looked, and for the first time his voice lost all authority. "I'm sorry," he said simply. Lena met his eyes. "Don't be, just listen next time." The night had deepened into that strange hour when time seemed suspended, neither night nor morning, just silence and consequence. The lamps flickered low, their wicks nearly spent. Lena stood by the counter, both hands flat on its edge, staring into the dim flame as if bracing herself for what she was about to say. Gabriel waited, his arms crossed loosely, the exhaustion in his eyes more emotional than physical. Maria sat at the booth, quiet but alert, the kind of stillness that hides watchfulness. When Lena finally spoke, her voice carried that steady calm born from too much pain. 3 years ago, she began, I worked in risk analytics under Victor Hale's supervision. Back then, Kestrel Dynamics was preparing a series of acquisitions, high profile, high pressure. One of them was a logistics firm called Harborspan. Gabriel frowned slightly. Harborspan, yes, that was one of Victor's earliest merger deals. Lena nodded. On paper, it was a dream buy. Clean books, rapid expansion, ideal for Kestrel's portfolio. But when I reviewed their data, something didn't add up. She took a breath. Their reported profits were inflated. Debt lines were disguised under strategic reinvestment. I flagged it in my report. I thought it was a mistake. I thought I was helping. Maria's eyes darkened, reading what came next before Lena said it. Gabriel, quiet, said, "And it wasn't a mistake." "No," Lena whispered. "It was deliberate. Someone inside Harborspan was feeding manipulated statements, and Victor's team knew. The acquisition price was based on numbers that didn't exist. When I raised it, the message I got from upstairs was clear." "What message?" Gabriel asked softly. She looked straight at him. "Adjust your conclusions to fit strategic direction. Their words, not mine. In other words, sign off on the lie and call it growth." For a moment, no one breathed. Maria's hand tightened around her teacup. Gabriel's face had gone completely still, the trained neutrality of a man who had spent his life mastering composure. "And you refused." "I refused," Lena said. "I told them my signature wouldn't appear on a false valuation." Her voice didn't rise, but the conviction in it filled the room. A week later, I was called into compliance. They said an amended version of the Harborspan report had been submitted from my account, complete with my electronic signature. The data had been corrected to align with Kestrel's strategy. It looked like I'd done exactly what I swore not to do. Gabriel's gaze dropped to the counter, as though the truth weighed too much to hold upright. You were set up. Lena nodded slowly. The audit trail pointed to me. My credentials, my timestamp, my workstation. I couldn't prove I hadn't done it. They called it a breach of ethical integrity. She smiled faintly, without warmth. It was a polite way to say, liar. The words hung in the air like frost. I lost my job, she continued, and my reputation. Every reference I'd earned, gone. When recruiters saw my name, they saw risk. No one in the financial district touches someone labeled untrustworthy. Maria's eyes glistened. You started over. I tried to, Lena said. I left New York. Took a bus north with one suitcase and $200 left in my account. Ended up in Graybridge because the diner needed night staff. It was supposed to be temporary. Her voice softened. But sometimes, exile becomes home. Silence again, deep, unmoving. The only sound was the low hum of the stove. Gabriel stood very still, his reflection wavering in the window pane like a ghost. Victor never mentioned HarborSpan's data inconsistencies, he said finally. Of course not, Lena replied. He built his promotions on that acquisition. It was his masterpiece. Admitting what happened would unravel everything he's touched since. Maria spoke quietly from the booth. You didn't deserve what they did to you. Lena managed a small, weary smile. Deserving never mattered much in that world. Then the sound of footsteps, heavy, confident, deliberate. The door opened again, this time without warning, without storm. The wind had died, but the temperature in the diner dropped all the same. Victor Hale stepped back inside, his coat immaculate, his expression unreadable. I hope I'm not interrupting, he said, brushing a few remaining flakes from his sleeve. Gabriel turned, his face tightening. You left to make a call. I did, Victor said easily, removing his gloves. And I wish I had better news. He glanced between them, Gabriel standing, Maria watching, Lena motionless by the counter. We have a problem, he said. A serious one. Gabriel's eyes narrowed. Define problem. HarborSpan, Victor said, his tone smooth but edged. And the two acquisitions that followed, North Point and Greyhall Logistics. Our legal department just flagged overlapping audit patterns. If those reports get pulled for federal review, it could open a chain investigation into Kestrel's accounting practices. Maria straightened, alarmed. Federal? Victor nodded solemnly. If the media catches a whiff, they'll call it corporate fraud. Even if we're cleared later, the damage will be permanent. He looked at Gabriel, then, almost casually, at Lena. Gabriel caught the glance. What does she have to do with it? Victor's voice was calm. The source of the original HarborSpan anomaly was her. And now, after years of silence, it just happens to resurface. Tonight, in your presence, while she's back in your orbit. He let the implication settle like poison. You think that's coincidence? He asked softly. Lena stared at him, disbelief flashing to fury. You twist everything, even now. Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. I'm not twisting, Lena. I'm predicting. It's what analysts do. Don't you dare, she started. Think about it, Gabriel, Victor interrupted smoothly. If this blows up, regulators won't look at me. They'll look at the employee who first discovered the fraud, the one already dismissed for ethical violations. It's the perfect story, isn't it? Gabriel said nothing. Lena's voice cracked slightly, not with weakness, but anger contained too long. You're still trying to use me as a shield, Victor shrugged, or a scapegoat. Semantics. Maria stood now, her calm dissolving. Enough. Victor turned to her, feigning respect. Mrs. Stone, I said enough, she repeated. You come into this place and act like you own the air we breathe, but all I see is a man who's afraid. Afraid someone finally stopped being silent. Victor's eyes hardened. You have no idea what's at stake. Maria met his gaze without flinching. Neither do you, apparently. The tension cracked open like ice underfoot. Gabriel moved between them, his face unreadable, his voice low. Victor, go wait in the car. Victor blinked. Excuse me? I said go, Gabriel repeated. You've done enough damage for one night. Victor hesitated, then gave a cold, controlled smile. Be careful who you believe, Gabrielle. One wrong assumption can bring down everything we've built. He turned toward Lena as he reached the door. And you, some stories don't end with redemption. Some end exactly where they deserve to. Then he was gone. Lena stood in the quiet that followed, her breath shaking only once before she caught it. Gabriel's eyes were still on the door, but his voice when it came was quiet and raw. "Is what you told me tonight, all of it, true?" Lena met his gaze. Every word. He didn't speak again, but she saw the war behind his eyes, between loyalty and conscience, between the world he'd built and the truth now tearing through it. Maria watched him from the booth, her fingers tightening around her scarf. She could almost hear the sound of something breaking, something that had been too strong for too long. The clock above the counter ticked past 2 in the morning. The storm hadn't stopped. It had only grown quieter, denser, the kind of silence that warns of an avalanche. Victor stood near the entrance, his coat glistening with melted snow, eyes sharp and confident as ever. Gabriel faced him across the narrow diner aisle, the oil lamp between them throwing fractured shadows across the walls. Lena watched from behind the counter, heart pounding, every sense taut. Maria sat motionless at the corner booth, her hands folded, gaze locked on her son. No one spoke until Gabriel broke the silence. "Let's stop circling," he said quietly. "You knew Harborspan's numbers were false, didn't you?" Victor tilted his head slightly, the faintest smirk tugging at his mouth. "False is a matter of perspective. Don't play semantics," Gabriel said, voice low but cutting. "Did you know or not?" Victor exhaled through his nose, as if the question bored him. "Of course I knew." The words landed like a slap. Gabriel didn't move, but something behind his eyes shifted. Disbelief, then something colder. Victor went on, smooth and unhurried. "It wasn't deceit, Gabriel. It was optimization. Harborspan was over-leveraged, yes, but the acquisition stabilized their cash flow. We protected shareholder interests, saved the company's infrastructure, and integrated their assets into something stronger. By lying," Gabriel said. Victor smiled faintly. "By managing perception. The markets run on faith, not facts. We gave them faith. We corrected the facts later." Lena's voice cut through the air, sharp as glass. "And what about the dock workers' pension fund that bought into that deal? The people who trusted those numbers because you told them it was safe?" Victor's eyes flicked toward her. "They were compensated." "No," she said. "They were sacrificed. You wrote off their livelihoods as collateral damage." He chuckled softly. "You've always been sentimental, Lena. That's why you don't survive in our world." Gabriel's hand clenched at his side. "You call that survival?" Victor turned back to him. "I call it realism. You've forgotten what it takes to stay at the top. Every empire bends the truth to keep standing. We don't destroy. We recalibrate. You can moralize all you want, but without me, Kestrel wouldn't exist." Gabriel's tone hardened. "Without integrity, it shouldn't." Victor's eyes narrowed. "Careful. That sounds like betrayal." "I'd say it sounds like clarity," Maria said quietly. Both men turned. She rose from her booth with measured grace, the soft wool of her scarf catching the lamplight. "You two have been speaking of markets and survival like they're the same thing," she said. "They're not. Survival is what people do when they have no choice. You," she looked at Victor, "chose this." Victor offered a polite smile. "Mrs. Stone, you're misunderstanding scale. These aren't personal decisions. They're structural. You can't build progress without friction. And you can't build decency without conscience," Maria replied. Gabriel's voice came quietly now, almost a whisper. "How many people lost their jobs because of those inflated numbers?" Victor didn't blink. "Restructuring is inevitable in a merger. Some positions become redundant." "Redundant," Lena repeated softly, the word bitter on her tongue. "They weren't redundant. They were real people. They had families, homes. You used them as figures in a risk column." Victor spread his hands, exasperated. "You still don't get it. We live in a world that rewards results, not intentions. You can either shape that system or get buried by it. I chose to shape it." Maria's gaze sharpened. "No, you chose to manipulate it. And worse, you taught my son to believe that's strength." Gabriel looked at her then, startled. She stepped closer, her voice low but steady. "Gabriel, when your father was alive, he used to tell you something. Do you remember? If you can't tell the truth without losing something, then what you're losing isn't worth keeping." He froze. He did remember. Victor's expression turned impatient. "This isn't about your father's bedtime morals. This is about survival in a market that eats the honest alive." "And yet," Maria said softly, Somehow, you've managed to look more eaten than alive." Victor's eyes flared, but Gabriel raised a hand. "Stop." He stepped forward slowly, closing the distance between them. For the first time, his voice carried authority not as a CEO, but as a man reclaiming his ground. "You used my name," he said quietly, "my company, my father's legacy. You built your version of power under the illusion of protection. You told me every risk was necessary, every lie was temporary, and I believed you." He took another step. "But tonight, I watched the cost of your version of loyalty. It looks a lot like cowardice dressed in logic." Victor's smirk faltered. "You're making a mistake, Gabriel." "No," he said, his tone absolute. "I've been living in one." The silence was electric. The lamp flame flickered violently as if caught in their tension. Gabriel straightened his shoulders. "You'll resign from Kestrel Dynamics, effective immediately. I'll have legal draft the paperwork in the morning." Victor laughed, low, incredulous. "You think you can just cut me out? You wouldn't last a week without me." Gabriel's reply was calm, final. "Then I'll learn." Victor's composure cracked for the first time. "You don't understand what you're walking into. If I fall, I'm not falling alone." Gabriel stepped closer, eyes like steel. "Then you'd better hope you land before I do." The wind outside surged, pushing the diner door open with a violent rush of snow. The gust whipped through the room, scattering papers and extinguishing one of the lamps. Victor grabbed his coat collar, glaring at the three of them. "This isn't over," he hissed. "No," Gabriel said, standing between him and Lena. "It's over for you." For a heartbeat, they stood like that, Gabriel's broad frame blocking the doorway. The storm behind Victor howling like something ancient. Victor's jaw tightened. "You'll regret this." Gabriel didn't move. "Not as much as I'd regret keeping you." Victor's eyes flicked to Lena, full of venomous understanding. "You think you're saving him? You're just giving him a slower death." Then he turned sharply and walked out into the storm, his figure swallowed by the white. The door slammed shut behind him. The diner fell quiet again except for the wind pressing at the glass. Lena stood frozen, her breath shallow. Gabriel's silhouette filled the doorway, his coat whipping slightly in the cold air that still seeped through. He turned slowly, meeting her eyes. "It's done." She studied him for a long moment, seeing the exhaustion beneath his composure. "No," she said softly. "It's just begun." Maria stepped forward then, laying a hand on her son's arm. Her voice was tender, but there was pride in it too. "You made the right choice, Gabriel." He looked at her, really looked, and nodded once. Outside, the storm howled on, carrying Victor Hale's shadow into the night. But inside the diner, beneath the golden light and the scent of burnt coffee and truth finally spoken aloud, something else began. The fragile, dangerous work of rebuilding trust from the wreckage of power. The storm had finally run out of anger. By dawn, the snow had stopped falling. What remained was silence. Thick, pure, and almost tender after a night that had felt like war. Outside the diner's frosted windows, Graybridge looked like a painting washed clean, rooftops buried in white, the harbor frozen still, the world holding its breath. Inside, the Harbor Light diner sat in calm disarray. Empty cups, melted candle wax, and the echo of words that had changed everything. Lena sat at the counter, shoulders slumped, hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold. Her body trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from the exhaustion that comes when adrenaline fades and truth finally lands. Across from her sat Gabriel Stone, not the CEO, not the strategist, just a man stripped down to something real. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his tie long abandoned somewhere near the coffee maker. For once, he didn't look like someone who commanded boardrooms. He looked like someone learning how to breathe. For a while they said nothing. The quiet between them was heavy but not hostile, a silence made of understanding. Then Gabriel spoke, voice low, steady, but gentler than she'd ever heard it. "Do you still have the original Harbor Span files?" Lena looked up, startled. "What?" "The raw data, the unaltered versions, everything they tried to bury." She hesitated, measuring the question and the man asking it. "Yes," she said finally. "I kept copies, encrypted drives, backup logs. I hid them in a safety deposit box in Boston." "Boston?" She nodded. "At a small community bank. My aunt used to have an account there before she passed. They never asked too many questions when I opened one in her name." Gabriel leaned forward slightly. "You trusted no one. Would you have?" she asked softly. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Maria stirred from the booth near the window. The light of early morning caught in her silver hair, turning it to faint gold. She rose, stretching her stiff legs, and walked over to them with the calm assurance of someone who'd already decided the next move hours ago. "So," she said, setting her hands on the counter, "we have the evidence, we have the truth, and we have 3 witnesses, us. What we don't have is time." Lena frowned. "Time for what?" "For Victor," Maria said simply. "He's not the type to disappear quietly. By noon, he'll already be rewriting what happened tonight, calling his lawyers, planting his version of events." Gabriel rubbed the bridge of his nose. "He'll spin it as a security leak or an internal dispute. He's good at that." "Then we need to move faster than him," Maria said. "The roads will clear once the plows reach the main route. We'll go to Boston, get those files, and deliver them where they can't be buried again." "Deliver them where?" Lena asked. "Someplace Victor can't bribe or threaten," Maria said, her tone matter-of-fact. "Federal investigators. Press if we have to. I don't care how powerful he thinks he is. The truth deserves daylight." Gabriel looked at his mother, then at Lena. There was a quiet awe in his expression, as though he'd just realized that between these 2 women, strength didn't roar, it simply refused to break. He nodded slowly. "We'll do it right. Chain of custody, timestamps, documentation. I'll call my compliance head directly, the one Victor never liked because she wouldn't play his games." Lena raised an eyebrow. "You trust her?" "I do," he said, "and after tonight, I'm done pretending loyalty is the same as integrity." Maria smiled faintly. "It's about time you remembered that difference." Lena's eyes softened. "You really mean to go through with this? Expose your own company?" Gabriel met her gaze. "Not my company, not anymore. The version Victor built doesn't deserve the name." The light outside shifted from gray to a pale, fragile blue, the kind that comes only after a storm. The glass of the diner windows fogged with their breath, 3 figures surrounded by the aftermath of chaos, yet bound by something new. Maria poured fresh coffee into their mugs, her movements slow, deliberate, grounding. She slid one to Gabriel, then one to Lena, before sitting down herself. For the first time since the night began, she looked peaceful. "When we leave for Boston," she said, "we go together. No one travels alone anymore." Lena blinked. "You don't have to." Maria reached out, placing her hand gently over Lena's. Her voice was soft but firm. "You saved my life, child. That makes you family. And in this family, we finish what we start." Lena swallowed hard, emotion rising unexpectedly in her throat. "You barely know me," Maria smiled. "I know enough. You told the truth when it cost you everything. That's more than most people can say." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Gabriel quietly placed his hand over both of theirs. His mother's weathered, Lena's trembling. The gesture was simple, but it felt like something sacred. Maria squeezed their hands once, like sealing a pact. "We do this not out of revenge, but because justice only works when people believe it still exists." Lena's eyes shimmered. "You sound like a teacher." "I was," Maria said softly. "Long before Gabriel was a businessman, he was a boy who used to watch me grade papers on ethics. Maybe some of it will come back to him on the road." Gabriel smiled faintly. "You never miss a chance to lecture. Only when it's deserved," she replied, eyes twinkling. Outside, the sun began to edge above the horizon, pale light spreading across the snow-covered streets. The world was still, as if holding space for what they were about to do. Lena looked toward the window, toward the endless stretch of white leading to the highway. "Boston feels far," she murmured. "Far," Maria agreed, "but not unreachable." Gabriel stood, pulling his coat from the back of a chair. Then it settled. "As soon as the roads open, we drive east." Lena followed his movement with her eye, uncertain but resolved. "And after that?" "After that," he said quietly, "we tell the world what really happened, and we make sure Victor Hale never spins another truth again." Maria lifted her mug in a small toast. "To truth, then, however heavy it gets." Lena raised hers. "2 second chances." Gabriel clinked his mug against theirs. "And to the people who remind us why they're worth taking." They sat like that for a while, 3 souls thawing in the fragile light of a morning that smelled like renewal. Outside, a snowplow rumbled distantly down the road, clearing the first path out of Graybridge. Inside, warmth finally returned to the air, carried not by fire or coffee, but by something far rarer, trust. Lena looked at Gabriel and realized, with quiet surprise, that she no longer saw the man who had once represented everything she hated. She saw someone trying, and that was enough, for now. 6 months later, the headlines told a story the night never could. Victor Hale and senior executives face federal investigation. Kestrel Dynamics cooperates with regulators in record-setting ethics inquiry. From silence to transparency, the company that chose to tell the truth. The same networks that once praised Victor's brilliance now replayed his downfall in slow motion. The footage was clinical, him escorted through courthouse steps, reporters shouting, snow swirling in white chaos around his expensive coat. Meanwhile, inside the glass towers of Kestrel Dynamics, a quieter revolution unfolded. Gabriel Stone sat before a wall of cameras and microphones, no longer the untouchable CEO, but something rarer, accountable. "I believed in people who did not deserve that belief," he said, voice steady. "But belief isn't weakness when it leads to truth. Kestrel Dynamics will be restructured from the inside out. No more gray zones, no more silence sold as strategy." The press captured every word. Some doubted him, others applauded. But for the first time, Gabriel didn't measure success in applause. He measured it in peace. Lena Cruz watched that broadcast from her new office, smaller than his, but filled with sunlight instead of power. The plaque on her desk read, Chief Ethics and Transparency Officer. It was her doing, the creation of a department that never existed before. She'd accepted the role on one condition, full autonomy and a whistleblower protection division with real legal independence. Her first act as head of the department was to hire people who had once been ignored for asking too many questions. For the first time in years, she didn't have to hide her name or her conscience. She no longer survived the system. She was redesigning it. That winter, Graybridge Harbor froze under a silver sky. The wind carried the scent of salt and snow, and the docks glittered like glass. Gabriel invited her to meet him at the newly built atrium above the harbor, a transparent dome of glass and steel overlooking the same water that had once swallowed his father's compass. He was already there when she arrived, hands in his coat pockets, the faintest nervous smile tugging at his lips. "You're early," Lena teased softly. "Old habit," he said. "I used to arrive early to control the room. And now? Now, I just didn't want to miss this view." She stepped beside him, gazing at the harbor below, the same docks where he had once lost his way, and she had once lost her future. Neither spoke for a while. The silence between them was gentle, full of the kind of peace earned through storms. Then Gabriel turned to her, pulling something small from his pocket, a box. Lena blinked, almost laughing. "You're not serious?" "Oh, I'm painfully serious." He opened it. Inside lay a ring, but not diamond, not platinum sparkle, or traditional wealth. It was simple, a deep, ocean blue stone set in brushed silver, the color of Graybridge in winter. "It's not much," he said, his voice quiet, "but diamonds feel like the language of deals, of everything I'm trying to leave behind." Lena looked at him, eyes glimmering. "And this?" He smiled. "This feels like the language of starting over." Her breath caught. "You practiced that line, didn't you?" "Every day for a month," he admitted, laughing softly, "and it still came out wrong." "No," she said, taking his hand. "It came out exactly right." She didn't need to think. Not this time. "Yes," she whispered. The word left her lips like the first sunrise after a long night. When the news of their engagement reached the media, the world reacted with something that resembled hope. Not because it was romantic, though it was, but because it symbolized something larger, the merging of truth and power, principle and persistence. The empire hadn't fallen. It had evolved. A week later, the Harbor Light Diner glowed warm against the pale blue dusk. Its sign had been restored, its booths polished, its walls freshly painted, but its soul remained the same. Now it belonged to Lena. The diner had survived the storm, just like her, and tonight it was full again, not of customers, but of family. Maria sat at her favorite corner booth, a wool shawl around her shoulders, watching her son fuss with the coffee machine, as though running a restaurant was his latest test of humility. Lena stood behind the counter, refilling mugs with practiced ease. Her engagement ring caught the light with every motion, glowing faintly against the wood. Even Mr. Alvarez, the old handyman who had once told her to lock up early, was there, raising a steaming cup of hot chocolate. "To new management," he said with a grin, "and to hot drinks instead of champagne. We don't need bubbles to celebrate good people." Laughter filled the diner. Warm, unguarded, alive. Maria lifted her own mug next. Her voice was light, teasing. "Before anyone asks, no, I wasn't lost that night." Lena turned, startled. "You weren't?" Maria smiled mischievously. "Let's say I simply arranged for fate to be on time." Gabriel nearly choked on his drink. "Mother, oh, don't act so surprised," she said, sipping serenely. "You two were both miserable. Someone had to intervene." Lena laughed. Real, open laughter that shimmered with the reflection of all the nights she'd once spent alone. Tears stung her eyes, but she didn't hide them. Outside the window, the harbor shimmered beneath the first snow of the new season. Blue-gray, endless, forgiving. Inside, 3 people sat in the warmth of the diner, hands occasionally brushing, laughter filling the space that once echoed with loneliness. Lena glanced down at her ring, then at the 2 people beside her. The man who had learned truth was stronger than loyalty, and the woman who had never stopped at believing in fate's timing. Her voice when she spoke was soft but sure. "Sometimes," she said, "storms don't destroy our lives." Maria looked up, smiling knowingly. "No," she said, "they just blow away the people who were never meant to stay. So, the ones who are can finally find each other." Gabriel reached for Lena's hand, resting his over hers on the table. Outside, snow began to fall again. Gentle, steady, harmless this time. The world, once fractured by lies, had found its quiet truth. And in the soft golden light of the diner, so had they.